In 480 BC, the largest army the ancient world had ever seen marched toward Greece. Ancient sources claim 2 million men. Modern historians put the figure closer to 100,000. Either way, the Persians were coming to burn Greece to the ground. And the only thing standing in their way was 300 Spartans. They knew they weren't coming home. That wasn't a miscalculation. That was the point. The Battle of Thermopylae. To understand why 300 Spartans chose to die at a mountain pass, you need to understand what they were protecting and what they were up against. The Persian Empire in 480 BC was the largest empire in human history. Under King Xerxes I, it stretched from modern-day Egypt and Turkey all the way to the edges of India. It had already conquered or absorbed dozens of nations. The Greeks were next. 10 years earlier, at the Battle of Marathon, a small Greek force had humiliated Persia by defeating an invasion army on Greek soil. Xerxes never forgot it. This wasn't just military conquest. This was revenge. Greece, meanwhile, was not a unified nation. It was a collection of city-states, Athens, Sparta, Corinth, Thebes, that spent most of their time arguing and fighting each other. The idea of them uniting against a common enemy was, by any historical standard, almost impossible. Almost. On one side, Xerxes and his Persian forces. Ancient accounts put the number at over 2 million. Modern historians believe the real figure was closer to 100 to 300,000. Either way, the largest military force ever assembled in the ancient world. It included elite troops, cavalry, chariots, and the fearsome immortals, Persia's 10,000-man royal guard, who were said to never drop below full strength. For every soldier killed, another was immediately placed in his position. On the other side, 7,000 Greeks, a coalition force led by a Spartan king named Leonidas. And Leonidas knew something the Persians didn't. He knew exactly where to fight them. Of those 7,000 Greeks, the core, the heart of the force, was 300 Spartans. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They were the Spartan royal guard, each one chosen personally by Leonidas. Each one already had a son to carry on his bloodline. The Spartans weren't invincible. But in a frontal clash where discipline mattered more than individual skill, they were unmatched. The word Thermopylae means hot gates, named for the sulfurous hot springs nearby. It was a narrow coastal pass in central Greece. At its narrowest point, it was roughly 15 meters wide. That's about the width of a 2-lane road. Here's why that matters. Persia's entire strategic advantage was numbers. A force of 300,000 against 7,000 in open battle is a massacre. There's no strategy that overcomes the gap in an open field. But in a 15-meter pass, numbers become irrelevant. You can only fit so many soldiers into the space at once. Suddenly, it's not 300,000 versus 7,000. It's the front row versus the front row, over and over again. And in a frontal clash between disciplined rows of soldiers, the Spartans were among the best in the known world. Leonidas didn't choose Thermopylae to die. He chose it to make the geography his weapon. Day 1. Xerxes sent wave after wave of soldiers into the pass, confident that sheer volume would overwhelm the defenders. They were wrong. The Greek phalanx, a formation of overlapping shields and extended spears, was almost impenetrable from the front. Each man's shield protected not just himself, but the soldier to his left. The Spartans were masters of this formation. They had trained for it since the age of 7. The Persians sent in soldiers from Medes, Scythians, and other subject nations. They were well-armed, brave, and completely unable to break through. The narrowness of the pass meant they couldn't use their cavalry or their numerical advantage. They were fighting in a corridor, and the men holding that corridor were among the most disciplined warriors on earth. Historians estimate Persia lost thousands of men on day 1. Greece lost almost none. That evening, Xerxes reportedly rose from his throne 3 times in anger and disbelief. The second day, Xerxes ran out of patience. He sent in the immortals, his personal elite guard. The soldiers who had never lost. It didn't matter. The Spartans had developed a tactic that turned the pass into a killing ground. They would feign retreat, pulling back, drawing the Persians forward, then turn and crash into the pursuing soldiers with devastating force. The Persians, unfamiliar with disciplined Greek warfare, fell for it repeatedly. The Immortals suffered catastrophic losses. They were forced to withdraw. 2 days. The entire Persian war machine, the greatest military force in the ancient world, had been stopped by a narrow pass and the men who chose to stand in it. But on the night of the second day, everything changed. His name was Ephialtes. He was a local Greek shepherd, and he told Xerxes about the goat path. There was a mountain trail, the Thermopylae path, that wound behind the cliffs and came out behind the Greek position. Leonidas knew it existed. He had stationed 1,000 Phocian soldiers there to guard it. But when Ephialtes led the Immortals up that path in the dark, the Phocians, surprised and outnumbered, retreated to higher ground. By morning, Leonidas knew. A scout had come back with the news. The position was lost. The Persians would be behind them before noon. He had a choice: retreat with the full force and live to fight another day, or hold the pass long enough for the Greek city-states behind them to prepare. Leonidas sent most of the allied forces south. The 300 Spartans stayed. So did roughly 700 Thespians, volunteers who chose to stay out of loyalty, and 400 the bands, who were likely held there as hostages to ensure Thebes wouldn't defect to the Persians. On the morning of the third day, Leonidas and his remaining force advanced, not retreated. Advanced into the widest part of the pass, where they had more room to fight and could inflict maximum casualties before the end. Ancient accounts describe the Spartans fighting with a ferocity that stunned even the Persian veterans. When their spears shattered, they drew swords. When those dulled or broke, they fell back on their shields and their fists. Fighting in a way the Persians had never seen from men who knew they had no escape. Leonidas was killed in the fighting. What followed became legend. The Spartans reportedly fought over his body to prevent the Persians from taking it, because a king's body was a symbol of victory, and they would not give Xerxes that satisfaction. In the end, the Persians resorted to the only tactic that worked. They buried the Greeks under arrows. Every last one of them died in that pass. But the Persians had lost an estimated 20,000 men in 3 days against a force that never exceeded a few thousand. Here's the thing about Thermopylae that gets overlooked. It was a tactical defeat. Greece lost. The Persians marched through, sacked Athens, burned the Acropolis. But it wasn't a strategic defeat. The delay bought the Greek city-states crucial weeks to prepare their naval forces. At the same time Thermopylae was being fought, a Greek fleet was holding the straits at Artemisium, just miles away. The plan was always to fight a delaying action on both land and sea. 6 months after Thermopylae, at the Battle of Salamis, the Greek fleet decisively destroyed the Persian navy, and Xerxes retreated. Greece survived. The foundations of democracy, philosophy, and science that would eventually shape much of the modern Western world survived. Because of a mountain pass. Because of a king who chose where to die. Because of 300 soldiers who understood that sometimes, the most powerful thing a warrior can do is not win, but hold. At the base of the statue of Leonidas at Thermopylae, there is an inscription. It reads, "Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie." Today, militaries still study Thermopylae, not for how to win, but for how to delay. How to use terrain to neutralize an enemy's numerical advantage. How to make a larger force pay so heavily for a victory that the victory becomes hollow. That's the lesson of this pass. Not that 300 beat millions, they didn't, but that a disciplined minority can change the course of history by forcing a larger enemy to bleed for every inch of ground. Until next time, stay tactical.